In this instalment with historian of the Holocaust in Slovakia, Madeline Vadkerty, we move on to discussing our chosen quotes. In particular, we focus on Tiso's position as a Catholic priest and the Vatican's reaction to the Holocaust.
Let's get into our three quotes then. So one quote that we kind of discussed before is it known as the Hollich quote then, this, Madeline?
Well, that's how I refer to it in shorthand, but yes, the Tiso making a public speech in Hollich.
Yeah, so Hollich is just a town in western Slovakia. And in 1942, so at this point it's August 1942, so this is after they've handed over nearly 60,000 Jews and paid for them, and these Jews, by this point, have perished in Auschwitz.
Not necessarily Auschwitz. About 26,000 Jews went to Sobibor, where they were killed immediately because it was an Action Reinhardt camp, and a number of them went to Lublin and wound up in Bauschetz or Majdanek, but also a large number went to Auschwitz.
Okay, so I'll read out what he said then, and I think it's worth quoting at length. So Tiso says, and we've mentioned earlier, this guy's a Catholic priest. People ask if what we do is Christian. Is it human? Isn't it robbery? But I ask, is it Christian if the Slovak nation wants to rid itself of its eternal enemy, the Jew? Is it Christian? Love of self is a command from God, and this love of self commands me to remove everything that damages me or threatens my life. I don't think I need to convince anyone that the Jewish element threatens the lives of Slovaks. We determined that the Jews, who made up only 5% of the population, had 38% of the national income. It would have looked even worse if we hadn't pulled ourselves together in time, if we hadn't purged them from us, and we did so according to the divine command. Slovak, cast off your parasite. So there's quite a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, it's a very powerful quote. It's not, I suppose, the first time a politician has distorted religion for their purposes.
No, but in there you've got a lot of things in there. You've got the economic argument as well. So 5% of the population and 38% of the national income. So that's very precise, isn't it? That figure of 38% of the national income, that must be completely made up. It sounded like a good number to him. Right, it's a lot more than 5%.
It's not. The Jews were roughly according to the 1940 census, they were 3.4% of the population, and they did have, I think that the number 38 might even be lower than the actual number, but I don't have that data in front of me, but they did have wealth that was disproportionate to their numbers.
Yeah, and you can see that obviously there's the dehumanization element as well. It's by at the end calling them parasites as well. So he's pulling on ancient theological antagonism between Jews and Christians. There's the economic argument in there, and then there's the language of dehumanization in there as well. So you can imagine,
absolutely,
to people that were already receptive of this message, this probably was quite an effective speech.
It probably helped shore up some support for the deportations because, as I had mentioned earlier, some people in some quarters had expressed discomfort about the way they were being carried out. And indeed, the way they were carried out was very cruel and dehumanizing. And some people may have seen that and had opinions about that. But in the propaganda, they emphasized that Jews were being sent away to work. and they actually had articles showing happy Jews working that were completely, they were something else, and it was completely made up. It took a while for the true nature of the deportations to come back, and for people to know what was really going on.
What it shows is that no one thing is sufficient. So you will tap into people's religious prejudices, and then you also need to back that up with a kind of economic argument. You need to back it up with the language of dehumanization, and then you need to say, and also these people are just going to work, so you need to throw everything you've got at it.
Well, they had complete and total control of the media, and they dominated the media with those kinds of messages from the very beginning. Also, he was a Catholic priest. He was an authority figure.
I think that's one of the things that, when we got onto the bigger picture messages, that is most astonishing about this period of history. He was a Catholic priest, so his career was, he was a figure of moral authority. That's what a Catholic priest is. That's your job title.
Correct.
That's what you get paid for. And he's taking part in the most immoral action imaginable, and he's
it is, and it's shocking because he sorry, go ahead, I'll tell you in a moment.
And he's reconciling his job as a figure of moral authority with committing the most heinous immoral act, which is it's kind of a juxtaposition.
Well, it fascinates me. I know that I'm just fascinated by how that all worked. I do know that he lied to the Pope, and he said, "Oh, that's just propaganda. They're going off to work." And he knew as early as, he might have known in the fall of 1941, by like September or October. At the latest, he knew by early 1942 what was going to happen to the deported Jews.
Also, come on, the Pope must have known. The intelligence network, the power, the resources, the information network of the Catholic Church. The Pope's going to know more than Joseph Tiso about what's going on during the Holocaust. So it can't be Tiso lying to the Pope. The Pope knew as much as anyone during this period about what the Holocaust.
He knew that Tiso was lying to him. In fact, after the war was over and Tiso was put on trial, the Vatican did not try to defend him in any way. They stayed far, far away from his trial.
Yeah, I bet they did. I bet
they dissociated with him.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. They basically threw him under the bus. They want to. After the Holocaust, you want to distance yourself from the Holocaust, don't you?
Indeed. The only thing that I don't understand is that he wasn't excommunicated. And now that the Vatican is opening up its archives, there's a new book out written by the head archivist of the Vatican, and the first chapter just blasts Tiso, saying they told him not to take on this job, and there were other people who, there was a Bishop Wojtaszek. They also told him don't take on this job, but they did anyway. And of course, this guy who wrote the book, this archivist, his name is Johann Ickx. He, of course, wants to absolve Pius. So it's hard to know. There are a lot of egos. There are a lot of agendas.
It looks like there's a reason that he's been brought in. It looks like there's a reason that this guy's been brought in. And why has it taken them so long to open the archives? This is...
Good question.
What are you trying to hide? Let's see the information. It's you that's keeping it. So I think if we move on to another quote, Eva, what is one of your quotes?
My next quote actually connects to this topic. It's on the 6th page. It says, the political atmosphere rapidly became overtly hostile towards Jews and other groups such as Czechs, progressives, or anyone else who did not support the Hlinka Slovak People's Party. After October 7th, it's in 1939, pogroms erupted in several Slovak cities and angry mobs smashed the windows of Jewish shops and homes, shouting anti-Jewish slogans. Now, the Hlinka Guard, in Slovak, Hlinkova Garda, it was a militia maintained by the Slovak People's Party in the period of from 1938 to 1945. It was named after Andrej Hlinka. And Hlinka was one of the most important Slovak public activists in Czechoslovakia before the Second World War. He was the leader of the Hlinka Slovak People Party since 1913. And he was also a Catholic priest. He was a journalist, a banker, a politician, but Hlinka was also a priest. Tiso was also a priest. Do you think there is a link, Madeline, between the professions of the two?
I think that, if I remember correctly, in Eichmann in Jerusalem, Hannah Arendt described Slovakia as a small country, a small agrarian nation, deeply Catholic. And then she said some other unfavorable things that I can't quote because I can't remember them in their entirety. But I think she used the word backward, but I'm afraid to quote it. Priests are, as Johnny said, are authority figures. Andrej Hlinka died in 1938, so he did not see any of this. People hypothesize. Roman Holets, who's a historian here, wrote a biography of him, and I have it. It's in that pile of books that I say I'm going to read it, and I haven't read it yet. But he was also a charismatic figure. He had cancer and he passed away. He made some pronouncements that were pro-Jewish, and he also made some that were anti-Jewish. He's a complicated figure. And yes, the desire to expel perceived enemies did not include only Jews. It included Czechs, and I think 25,000 or 30,000 Czechs were expelled from Slovakia in December of 1938. They had to leave because Slovaks were angry at them. When Czechoslovakia was formed after World War I, Czechs needed to come and help modernize the country and create a functioning bureaucracy for the country and help establish an educational system. And these Czechs had been in their positions for 20 years, and Slovaks wanted them. And they kicked all the Czechs out, and they had to leave. They were very... Also, they were very discriminatory toward Roma. They did not treat the Roma, they discriminated against them, but they did not deport them. They put some of them in labor camps. Some of them died after the Slovak national uprising. Some of them were partisans, but they did not have the same type of persecution as Jews.
Yeah, because I think I'll keep on coming back to the economic argument because I just think it's so present in this. Maybe the reason that the Roma and the Sinti aren't as severely persecuted is they haven't got as much to take, have they? There's not as much. You can't rob them as much. And then obviously you don't have this long-standing theological antagonism against the Roma and the Sinti as well. So those two things together.